I don't think we really need to talk about everything that showed up there because a lot of the stuff wasn't entirely new. But if we just kind of tackle some of the big guns, I think really we have to start with where we left off, ironically, last week with the Rogue Prince of Persia, which of course is the roguelike Prince of Persia game being developed by Evil Empire in collaboration with Ubisoft. We finally saw that trailer. We saw kind of the new art style they're going for, confirmation that that game is going to launch in early access next month and be worked on, I think, well, for the foreseeable future, I believe. The early access release represents about the first third of the game, if I'm not mistaken. There are some people in the press that have already gone hands-on with the Rogue Prince of Persia. That's something I didn't actually know until fairly recently. And the one podcast I listened to with someone who had played the game themselves described the game as feeling decidedly Dead Cells-like. Perhaps to be expected, but Jonesy, maybe putting that to one side just based on kind of what we all saw in that trailer. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, we
You're the Prince of Persia guy.
We were talking briefly about it before the show. I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to be. I'm not a roguelike kind of guy. And we touched on the fact that I said that the movement and the fluidity and some of the traversal stuff looked refreshing and looked very Prince of Persia, which is something that I'm really keen on. And I know we were we were talking about the fact of this is a specific type of game, and the fact you say it is a Dead Cells game, it's made by the makers of Dead Cells. But I was a little bit heartened by maybe it wouldn't feel like that to play quite as much as it would, because I would like to like it, and the art style worked for me. Like I like that. I like what this game was putting down, more so than I thought I would. Like I said last week, so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, the art style was an interesting one that kind of caught a few people's attentions across the internet. Kind of this sort of like flat, sort of shaded look. A lot of kind of like soft, sort of like people like looking at the prints almost being purple, for example, as something that kind of stood out. It's simple, and it's fairly unique, but I think it just about works, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, I think so. There's something, I think if you're going to go to a totally different genre, I mean, they've already done it somewhat with
The Lost Crown?
The Lost Crown, thank you. Can't remember the name of it. They've already done it a bit, and if you're going to another genre, I quite like the idea of sort of changing the art style again so that the two don't look too similar. I think that's quite a good way of doing that and of sort of delineating the two. So I have no problem with the art style at all. Like I said, I liked it, and I'm someone who hated the change they went to after the trilogy, where they had that horrible cell shaded rubbish that you love.
I only love it because you hate it.
But no, so I'm all about this, and I didn't like. It's not like I didn't like Dead Cells. I liked Dead Cells. I just can't get behind the format of roguelike. I just don't enjoy. I don't know. They just feel kind of pointless to me, and I know that's everyone who loves that game style probably hates it when I say stuff like that. But I just because it's like, oh yeah, but now you can just do it again. Like do the same. Just keep going like 15,000 more times, and you get like loads more coins, and you can unlock this. I'm like, I don't want to. I like my narratives more linear. I like it. I like it like that. Like I Lost Crown I thought was great. Like we spoke about before about how I didn't enjoy some of the things that game was putting down,
Yes.
but I much preferred that style. I don't know. Maybe I'm too old to appreciate.
Well,
I'm not. Bloody the old original like Rogue and stuff were older shit. So they ruined it from early on.
I don't agree with you, but I know what you're saying. Is how I feel about that. I'm definitely more of like a kind of a rogue light kind of fan when it comes to the various kind of like the delineations of that subgenre, because when you're playing something like Returnal, which has very few kind of permanent upgrades and really is about kind of like learning through dying and learning through repeated attempts and getting better at a game. For as much as I think I know that's overall the point, I do still want there to be something where I'm like, okay, I'm going in there with one more heal this time, or my sword does this much more damage. I do need some of that stuff, and I do kind of struggle without it. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Rogue Prince of Persia handles some of those elements. We will find out sooner rather than later. Also, it was interesting to hear in the aftermath of this game's announcement, they did kind of put out some of the fires that maybe some people had created in the midst of, hang on a second, didn't we just get the Lost Crown? How are we going to separate the two? Are they going to be similar? I think the devs at Evil Empire were saying that the Lost Crown was in alpha, and pre-alpha when they got signed off on this, which meant the two games were almost developed in tandem. And they said that at various points they were even swapping builds to almost make sure they weren't doing too many things similarly. And so I do hope that in that sense that the Rogue Prince of Persia represents a different kind of Prince of Persia game to the Lost Crown, because it would be a shame if we, after years of waiting, got two Prince of Persia games in 5 months that were like very similar.
Yeah,
that would just be bizarre. Yeah. Sorry, it sounded like you had something to add.
No, I was gonna say they look on the surface like they could be very similar, which is why after now seeing what he's putting down, I'm like, actually, I do think they could. I do think they are doing a decent job at separating the two. I don't think they're gonna feel too similar, and we don't have to wait that long to have a little try.
No, you're right. We don't. One thing we do have to wait a little bit longer for, though, probably at least another year, is Slay the Spire 2, the long-awaited sequel. This was actually the game that opened the show, and while it was admittedly an animated trailer, we did get to see the 3 lead characters, which I'm sure means something to a lot of people out there, because the reason I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Slay the Spire is because for as much as that game came out and kind of reviewed very well, and it seemed like it was just, a very solid kind of like, deck builder game with, again, sort of like roguelike elements, it has kind of almost taken on a completely different form in the years since, to the point where I know there are some people out there who consider Slay the Spire like amongst their favorite games of all time. It's not my cup of tea. I believe it's not yours either. But big deal. Slay the Spire 2, 2025, and the first game at this point is on just about every platform that you could hope to play it on, including as of at the time, but I think it came out on like Apple Arcade or something for free as well, iOS and Android. So any interest in Slay the Spire, no reason not to take them up on it. Much the same way you can play Vampire Survivors on just about everything now as well, as it has made its way onto PlayStation, which is kind of weird, or it is making its way onto PlayStation, a platform that I don't know if I assumed it was already on, but I think I assumed it was already on. Sometimes when games like Vampire Survivors are simultaneously so small and so ubiquitous, you just kind of assume they're already on every platform.
There's no reason why they wouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, it's 50 kilobytes. Someone just push the button. That's a joke, of course. But I presume that is, another however many millions of people that are now able to play Vampire Survivors for the first time. And if you're amongst them, I highly encourage you to do so. And if you time it well, you may end up playing a new piece of DLC that is actually a collaboration with Konami based on the Contra license called Operation Guns, which is a fantastic name for any piece of DLC, any addition, any expansion to any game ever. That's arriving May 9th. Will you be dipping back into Operation Guns, Jonesy?
Do you know what? I've not played Vampire Survivors, so I would like to play it, and probably will play it for the first time on the PlayStation.
You've never played Vampire Survivors?
I've not played Vampire Survivors.
What? How is that? I'm just hearing this.
You and Chris have talked about it at length before, and I know you guys have both played it like a decent amount, and I've never been able to join in the conversation. I've gotten to the point where
it's like 70p.
I've got it. Like, I've got the game, but I've just never, like, I've got it on Steam, I believe, but I've just never actually got round to. I don't even know if I installed it, but I just haven't got around to it. It's one of those where I was like, I will do, and then I didn't, and then I was like, I will, and I didn't. I will.
I think I just assumed that you'd played it like a couple of times, didn't like it as much as everyone else, and kind of put it to one side.
No, not at all. But then we talked before about that there was the Contra DLC, and that to me is like, I'm well up for that. Like, I loved a bit of Contra as a kid, so yeah.
Well, watch this space then. May 9th, Operation Guns. We get to hear Jonesy's debut opinions on Vampire Survivors. What an exciting time. Jonesy, I don't know if there's anything else you necessarily want to kind of call out. I know when you were kind of going through some various trailers and updates prior to us going live. You did like the look of Shadows of Doubt, which is, of course, the first-person sort of voxel-based, procedurally generated detective game. I think fairly recently went into 1.0 and now is adding new content to the game, this time via its Sharpshooter Assassin update, which introduces 2 new killer variants, seemingly sort of like sniper-oriented in their nature. Stood out to you based on the trailer?
Yeah, like that voxel look, it really grabs me, and it almost reminds me of, or it has that similar sort of something like I always forget the name of the game.
Teardown.
Yeah, no, of course, Teardown, exactly. Which I've played.
Is that what you were thinking of?
No, what the voxel style, but then there's that kind of like overly pixelated style in general. Like Teardown, immediately you're like, okay, is this a Teardown like DLC? Immediately when you see it, and then you're like, oh no, this is something different. But then to add in the detective noir elements to it, I had not seen this until I was watching the this edition, and it just looks brilliant. And you even said, like, I think that you we will get onto it in a bit, but you sort of dipped your toe a little. And yeah, it looks fantastic. And immediately I'm like, I want to download this game and I want to play it. And the fact that they've got this Assassin DLC sounds wicked, because I've not played any of it, so I'm excited for playing any of it and playing the DLC as well. I don't know, something about the voxel look just kind of appeals to me.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way, and so I have played some of Shadows of Doubt in the past week. I was in the same boat as Jonesy, where I kind of saw this trailer, and for whatever it was, like I'd known about Shadows of Doubt for a little while. I'd actually had it in my Steam wishlist for a little while too. But there was something about this update and the prospect of like investigating a murder of like someone being sniped through a window that was like, I've got to get onto this. And it's cool. I definitely think the voxel sort of based look works better in some respects than it does in others. Like it lends the kind of the city and the world a kind of an interesting feel, especially as the game is kind of like very heavy on sort of like lighting and weather effects. Like it feels like it is always nighttime, even when it's supposedly morning in the game's logic. It's always raining or like sleeting, or there's always something kind of atmospheric going on, and it mixes a lot of those elements in it to create quite a pleasing look. I do think sometimes the character models look a little bit odd, proportionally speaking. But I think that's a very small price to pay for what allows them to create these like very interesting mechanics within a, broadly speaking, procedurally generated world. They have one sort of like prefab city that you can do everything in, but essentially, like, you know, you can create a new character, a new detective, if you will, like load into this, like, even if you choose the pre-created city, and everything then is procedurally generated from that point onwards. And there's a tutorial in the game, which I recommend everyone do, should you ever pick this up, because it kind of keeps going further and further down this rabbit hole, and what you realize, what you're left with is, in spite of what it may look like, it's one of the more true detective-like experiences that I think a game has ever given me. If you go back to kind of like the LA Noirs of the world, where we're always being criticized for being too handholdy and too afraid to like let you kind of make mistakes. Like Shadows of Doubt is all about, as the name might suggest, is all about mistakes. And it's all about like the stunning and sometimes even like intimidating different means you have of kind of like figuring out crimes. And sometimes you start off with like the simplest of leads, like, you might know the place someone works, their eye color, their rough height, and the fact that they're like involved in something shady, and you might not even know what. And then you might go and scope out their place of work, and then like you might be able to convince the person on reception to give you a tour. And when you're on tour, like you might kind of like notice something about like how the locks work, or the fact that they hide a key under their mat by the front door, and like then you wait somewhere, and you come back at night, and you find your way in, and you pick the lock on the circuit breaker so you can turn off the security cameras, and you notice someone's computer passcode might be on a sticky note because they keep forgetting, so you can log into their computer. And if you go through their emails, for example, you find something pertinent to whatever you're investigating, and it's not just murders, you can like take on any kind of PI work, you could do humiliation work, you could take on like photography, things. You can do like espionage and thieving things, and like there's a bunch of different stuff. Again, all jobs that you find dynamically, like people post like job offers and stuff like that at telephone boxes and things like that in the world. And then, yeah, you might go through the emails, like I said, find something pertinent to that case, like print out that piece of information, and you've also got your own kind of corkboard, if you will, like you imagine. And again, like if you go back to something like Alan Wake, where it's like, hey, we're going to present all the information you pick up, or the saga in that case picks up on this board. But like, as anyone who's played Alan Wake 2 knows, when you get a new piece of information, a new piece of evidence, you can only get it right. Like, you find the link between a picture or a Polaroid that you've just taken and a scene of a crime or a person of interest.
Well done, and reveals the connection.
Exactly. Like Shadows of the Doubt is like you literally create and write your own connections. Like if you want to click and drag one of those red sort of like Always Sunny in Philadelphia style red strings from one thing to another, and then write what the connection is, you can physically do that.
Right.
And like you're going through and like you're pinning, and before you know it, even on the tutorial, you've got this massive board of all things you've pinned where like this was this person, this was their like work security, this is their like profile, and like this is who they live with, and like this is who their landlord is, and like you connect all these dots and all to try and it's a very interesting and engaging concept that is not executed flawlessly. I think sometimes some of the AI kind of leaves something a little bit to be desired. It's like for all the sophistications there is in some parts, is that severely lacking in sophistication in others, and there are still elements where you're like, man, I wish this system wasn't quite so rigid. Right. Like I snuck into a room and an NPC who was like coming up the stairs saw me, and now like an alarm's going off and people are trying to punch me to death, and I can't communicate with anyone, and I can't settle this down. And it's just like, that's where the game becomes a little bit more binary of just like, hey, you fucked up and now everything's going to implode. That stuff, again, could be more elaborate, but then it would be a very different game, and a much more complicated game, I imagine, that would have to, pull back on some of the other kind of freedoms it offers you to create this kind of different experience. So it is what it is, and what it is very engaging.
Yeah, no, I think I'm always often thought, like, when you get those detective elements in other games, it's often easy to think like, oh, why don't they just make a game where you can really go to town on this sort of stuff? And I'm there for it. Sounds good.
Absolutely. I look forward to hearing your thoughts should you get your hands on it anytime soon. Other than that, Josie, I don't know if there's anything else you kind of want to touch on. I know that, again, some sort of fan favorites were present. We did get another quick look at Hyperlight Breaker from Heart Machine. Red Hook Studios' Darkest Dungeon 2 was there, talking about a new mode that is going to come to that game as a free update later on in the year. Pal World showed us their upcoming arena mode, which, again, there wasn't a huge amount to either the mode or the way they showed it. I couldn't tell which way that went, but again, when you're showing more content from what is still ostensibly one of the biggest games of the year, it's a pretty good get for a show like this. Couple of games that we were seeing for the first time that I thought looked really cool. There was a bullet hell kind of shooter called Kill Knight that I really liked the style of. Not, totally radical or nothing we haven't seen before, but solid. And then Dino Lords I also wanted to give a shout out to, which was like somehow the second game of the year after Kingmakers to have a trailer that just took a very sudden right turn that involved dinosaurs. But I'm here
more of that. Yeah, more.
Exactly.
Keep doing
it. The more games that look like regular games of a certain genre and then all of a sudden just have dinosaurs or some kind of weird twist, where like, in the case of Kingmakers, like modern weaponry is being brought into an old-timey, RTS or action game. Like, yeah, make it happen. Any other closing thoughts on the Triple-I initiative, Jonesy?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything that I would have said. I would just say, like, I think it was a good showcase. I think it was more of this. Like, I thought it was a great thing to do. Like I said, it would be nice if they had a little bit more of the personality tied into it as well. But I can appreciate how that's something which maybe, is a lot harder to to bring together. If you're not just putting trailers together and doing it on that end, you've also got to pull together like presenters and stuff. Maybe it's not possible. But hey, I'm all for indie devs, getting more exposure, putting more stuff out there. So it was good to see and nice to have, and a lot of good games.
Absolutely. A lot of great games. Really pleasantly surprised that show kind of snuck up on me in the way that it did.